You can argue with me in the comments if you want. What's happening, everybody? It's Scott here from WFLVC, and I made a video a few days ago about why I shoot with Fujifilm cameras for my personal photography, and that video has done pretty well, and a couple of the comments have said that people kind of want to see what gear is my own personal gear. So I'm going to make that video, and I am realizing now that I have too much stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with a little bit of gear acquisition syndrome, as long as you're not putting yourself into massive amounts of debt or forgetting to feed your children. So let's back the camera up here. I'm going to pull this table over, and I'm going to show you my own personal gear, the stuff that I own and that I use on a regular basis.
A few moments later.
Okay, I think we've got it all set up here. So this is all of my Fuji gear, lenses, bodies. I don't have all the accessories out here, but I do have all of my lens adapters. I'll get into those last. Now, the one thing I want to start out with, my favorite Fujifilm accessory that I have is this battery charger right here. It's by a company called Numoa? I don't know, is that Numoa? Anyways, it's a dual battery charger. It's micro USB. Fujifilm's battery chargers are horrendous, and a lot of cameras will charge internally now with a USB, micro USB or USB-C cable, but I prefer to have a bunch of spare batteries on hand, so that's where this thing comes into play. It is a fantastic little battery charger, and I got it on Amazon for maybe 25 or 35 bucks, and it came with 2 third-party batteries. That's another thing. I buy almost exclusively third-party batteries just because the Fujifilm branded batteries are so expensive, and I've never had a failure or an issue with an off-brand battery, and I've used many different brands. That's not to say that you won't have a problem with yours, but that's just my experience, is that they're quite good. This was the very first Fuji X series camera I ever owned. This is a Fujifilm X-A1. This is a non-X-Trans sensor, so a Bayer sensor, entry-level interchangeable lens X series camera. It doesn't have a viewfinder, it just has a screen. It is my favorite camera. I will never sell this camera. This is sentimental beyond words. It was bought for me by my family for one of my birthdays. This is what sort of sent me down the path with Fujifilm and their X series. My table's kind of crooked here. You know what? We're just gonna go with it. I love this camera. I shoot it like a waist level finder, so I put the screen out at a 90-degree angle and I'll hold it down and I'll shoot like this. It's great for street photography. The performance to price ratio, if you can find a used one of these, one of the best cameras on the market. I made a video about it, oh man, it's a year ago. I was in Toronto a year ago, and I love this camera, so maybe I'll link that video below. I got a lot of videos to link, so maybe not. You guys can just go find them. You're very industrious. My next camera is my original X100. So this is the 12 megapixel non-X-Trans sensor, the very first X100. And I've got just an L bracket with a grip on here and a thumb grip and a soft shutter release lens hood. So I've customized it a little bit to sort of make it my own. I love this camera, and the images that it produces are stunning. There's just a certain quality to this camera and also this camera that it's kind of immeasurable. It's not something that you can equate to the hardware or the software. It just produces an image that I find very pleasing. I can hear my dogs barking upstairs. So next is my absolute workhorse camera. This is my XT20, and you can see it's got this ridiculous cage and monitor on it. This is what I film all of my YouTube videos on, so these talking head videos, this is what I use. Right now I'm using a Panasonic FZ or FZ, depending on where you live, 300, which is a bridge camera. Really great bridge camera, actually. It used to be my main YouTube camera until I started shooting with this. The reason I have these handles on here is because they both have cold shoes on them. I put a monitor on this side, I put a microphone on this side, and then I've got the top handle. And if I ever want to go out and do an actual shoot with this thing, these handles are so comfortable and make sort of long days of shooting tolerable. It's also got an AC adapter, or AC/DC adapter, so I don't have to use a battery. I can just plug it right into the wall and record until my face hurts from talking too much. And then on that camera, I've got the XF 18-55 kit lens, the f2.8-4. This lens, if you get a Fujifilm X series camera and you only have money for one lens, get this lens. It is very, very good. And then my last Fujifilm X series body is the XT100, which just came out a few months ago. It is essentially an XA5 and an XT20 sort of mashed together. It's Fujifilm's entry-level X series camera that has a viewfinder. It's the only non-X-Trans sensor camera that has a viewfinder. Now you're noticing kind of a theme here. 3 out of my 4 cameras don't have X-Trans sensors. That's sort of a personal choice for me. I do enjoy the X-Trans sensor, but I find the results I get from the non-X-Trans sensors just a little more pleasing to my eye, and that's just a personal preference. It's not saying that one's better than the other. You can argue with me in the comments if you want. Then for lenses, I've got the 27mm f2.8 pancake lens. This is another must-have lens for Fujifilm X series shooters. This lens is affordable, it is very compact, it produces very stunning images, it produces beautiful images, it is very good in low light. It's just a really great lens, especially for travel. A lot of the time I will throw this lens on my XA1, and I used to call this the poor man's X100, and it really is. Like, it's a pretty compact package, and the image quality is really, really good. Next up, I've got the 35mm f1.4. This is one of the original Fuji lenses, and I'm just noticing how dirty it is, so I could give it a good clean here, but this lens is magic. I would recommend this lens over the 56 1.2, over the 35 f2, the 50 f2. It's not as fast to focus, but it renders colors beautifully. The out of focus areas when it's wide open are some of the nicest I've seen on any lens. It's just super smooth. I love this lens, and you can find it for pretty cheap because, like I said, it's one of the original X series lenses, so there are a lot around. Next up, I have the little power zoom kit lens that came with this XT100. I don't like power zoom lenses, but I decided to keep this one because it's pretty small and good for travel. It's very light, it's all plastic. The rest of these lenses, well, except for this one, the rest of these lenses are all metal. This is another entry-level lens. So the entry-level lenses are called XC for consumer, and the professional lenses are called XF. I don't know what the F is for. This lens is the 50 to 230mm f4.5 to 6.7, so it is a telephoto lens with it's a big air pump. It's probably going to be filled with dust one day, but right now it's holding up pretty good. Really small aperture on this lens. Its price point reflects that sort of performance, but there's just something about the images, again, that this lens produces that are just, they're great. I'm going to do a review on this lens. I did one way back when I started this YouTube channel, and I feel like this deserves a redo because this lens is very, very underrated. I enjoy this lens quite a bit. And then we have the second most expensive lens in the Fujifilm lineup. It used to be the most expensive until they came out with that insane f2.8 zoom lens, but this is the XF 100 to 400. It's f 4.5 to 5.6. Both of these zoom lenses have optical image stabilization. This one's like 2 stops or something. This is 4 or 5 stops. This lens, I love doing wildlife photography, specifically birds. This lens is just very, very good. And, you know, it should be for what it costs. It's an expensive lens. This isn't something you're going to go buy unless you're going to use it. I don't use it as much as I should, but I do put some miles on it every now and then. There's eagle season coming up here in Vancouver, so this thing will be getting a workout very, very soon. That's it for lenses. The next thing I want to talk about, I also have Fujifilm macro extension tube. This is a Fujifilm one, like the proper official one. They also, there's third-party ones that I hear work exactly the same as this for less money, so take that for what it's worth. And then, let me just make some room here. All of these guys are lens adapters, because I have a lot of vintage lenses, whether they're Pentax lenses, Leica lenses, Contax lenses, Minolta lenses. Using vintage lenses on these new cameras is a lot of fun. And actually just today I went out and I was shooting some images on this XT100 with a Carl Zeiss 50mm f1.7, an old Contax Yashica mount lens from Film SLR that I bought at a swap meet. The options this gives you for lenses is essentially unlimited, but they're called dumb adapters, so they don't have any optical glass in them, and they don't have any autofocus capabilities, so you're going to have to manually focus all the lenses, and you're going to lose some of the image because all of the lenses I'll use on these adapters are full frame, where all of these cameras that I can use them on have APS-C sensors which are smaller, so you're losing a bit of the image. You can get some that actually have a piece of optical glass, and they're called focal reducers or speed boosters, depending on who's selling them, where you'll get full frame performance from the lens on an APS-C sensor, and the f-stop actually decreases, so an f1.4 lens becomes like an f1 lens or something. Don't get your calculators out and tell me how wrong I am. I'm just saying it makes them faster. I'm not saying that's the actual number. I love adapting vintage lenses. It's one of my favorite things to do with these cameras. And I mean, that's it. That's all the gear I have. I've got a trip to Dublin coming up in a couple of months, just a quick 3-night trip to Dublin, and I think I'm probably just going to take this and maybe get something else from Fujifilm to take along with me to test out while I'm there. But yeah, that's all of my Fuji gear, so it's not like a crazy amount. I think maybe 4 bodies is probably a little bit insane, but I have really pared down my lenses to a bare minimum of what works for me. Hopefully I didn't bore you to death with just talking about the cameras that I own, but a couple of people said they wanted to know what I had, so this is it. Anyways, guys, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.